Hello and welcome to this Mobalytics video. I'm your host Virakayu, and in it we will be taking a look at the 5 best champions that you need to main for each respective role in order to give you the best chance to win and climb throughout the entire season. We did make a video on champion pools and the best way to sort of develop that and why it's so important to have a good strategy and how challenger players actually use this to climb. And it is worth noting that the most common comment that we received on that champion pool video was what actually makes a good champion pool, what champions can we use that sort of stick with us the whole season. So we're going to cover different playstyles and why you'd want to main these champions, but these are all definitely champions that have increased win rate with the more games played. This means that as you improve at the game, you also improve at your champion, and this gives you the best chance to have a much higher rank at the end of the season than at the start. So what are we looking for in a champion for our champion pool? Most importantly, we are looking for high skill expression. Now, not necessarily super complicated to play, but they must have a kit that isn't too binary, that allows you to make outplays yourself versus most of the champions in the game. It can allow you to express your mechanical prowess, unless of course you want to play Yasuo, in which case you do a lot of E-ing and you throw a wind wall out and it looks like you're being productive, but really you're 0-8. Secondly, you want to be pretty OP when learned properly. That means once you've mastered the mechanical skill set, the builds, the itemization, all the varieties of that playstyle that you can possibly have from that champion, that you become a demon on the Rift. And while I don't mean Teemo, I mean your impact can be as such towards the enemy team. You essentially want you and that champion to have such a connection that the enemy team actually ends up banning that champion in the following lobby. And naturally, if you want to have that, you need to have high impact on your champion, and that's our third point. Way too often we see top laners complain, well, I won lane 1v1, but then, you entered the enemy top laner and I lost the game. Well, did you really beat the enemy top laner then? They roamed, they made impact elsewhere on the map, they were good at objectives, they were good at team fighting. League of Legends is more than the first 5 minutes of the game, and when you have a champion that can have high impact across all phases of the game, that's the one you want to look to main. And this fourth point is very important. It must be very good through all kinds of metas, and that really isn't a question. There's no point maining a champion, becoming dedicated to it, learning everything about it, becoming molded by it, and then when it snows one day in March, you just can't play it because it doesn't really fit the meta. And then of course that completes our circle almost. It takes it back to the high skill expression. It needs to have a kit that allows you to adapt to the metas. And finally, our fifth point in the middle of all of this, it's not super popular. That means when you look at the patch notes history, you don't see 3,000 things happening from one patch to another. Maybe there's 1 or 2 touches every season. Maybe it hasn't been touched in 3 years. Look at the play rate. You don't want something that has a 30% play rate because that means it is meta. That means it will get nerfed if the win rates are too high, and that means everyone is looking out for it. Now, just as a note, that doesn't necessarily mean all the champions on this list will be off meta. It just means that perhaps you're not going to see them 100% every game if they're not picked or banned. Maybe they will receive touches, maybe they are quite common at the moment, but that doesn't mean they're going to remain that way for the whole season. And on that note, let's begin with the mid lane, and let's begin with Katarina. And yes, her win rate is kind of high at the moment. She is a bit more popular because of the synergy with the new Conqueror rune, but she is by far one of the best one-tricks in general. Her win rate goes massively up with the more games that you play. Because she isn't the easiest champion to master and pick up and just run away with, once you hone those skills, which can take you quite a few games, and you become super fluid with all of her combos and her rotational capabilities, her laning matchups, when to roam, when not to roam, how to all in and get resets, this high skill champion, even when not meta, can be made to work, especially in those mid MMRs where laners really don't understand proper laning phases. So even if you technically lose a lane matchup, they won't know how to exploit it because you are so good on that champion. Perfect solo queue champion, great at every single rank. You can start from silver and go all the way up to challenger with her. It takes time, it takes dedication, you're gonna lose some games at the beginning, but once you start finding that fluidity with her kit, find a nice jungler to spam gank for you and then roam the map together and just destroy everyone before 25 minutes. And on that note, we have someone similar, Fizz. He is rarely ever touched balance-wise. He did receive a few touches recently, and he's played a ton, so won't really get taken away out of the game because he is very popular. And he's very popular for a reason. He's pretty face roll once you get going because of the fact that he's got targeted abilities, W can't be touched. His mobility is basically more difficult than trying to catch a sardine with your bare hands. He is a high win rate champion and he is very snowbally, and he does have some similarities to the Katarina playstyle. But once you've mastered that mobility and you've learned a lot about enemy champion CC and stuns such that you can use it to dodge those, and most importantly when you learn his damage spikes, when you get Lichbane, when you get extra items, How much damage can you do with a full combo without even thinking about it? Those things that will start becoming subconscious, part of your muscle memory, will just enable you to get better and better. As long as you're improving at the game, you keep Fizz with you, you can climb all the way to the top as well. Now, we must talk about Talon. A lot of people hate Talon. Junglers hate Talon. Why? Because once he gets a lead, once he starts roaming, his parkour type Assassin's Creed nonsense is just so irritating to deal with when he's taking your raptors, hopping your walls toward your buffs, and invading with the enemy jungler. If he gets a 1 or 2 kill lead in lane, it's almost impossible for your mid laner to follow when he roams for fear of face checking and dying. That means if they do decide to invade you, it can take you completely out of the game. He's always got a high win rate, he's never really touched, he's one of the most common one tricks in Master Plus actually. Korea loves to play him because of the early game snowball plus the roam potential, and as I said, it's basically impossible to stop him from having a decent game, and even when he's behind, you simply let the wave push, roam to side lanes, and use that huge difference in skill cap plus roaming to get yourself and your team back in the game, and that is why he is such a good pick. Now next we could go with yet another melee champion in Yasuo, but he is banned and picked a lot. It's irritating for people to face him, so no matter what happens, they're just gonna ban him as it is. And to that note, we need to talk about something that is quite OP, and that's Vladimir. And this pick becomes particularly spicy when you learn his damage output. It's one of the highest win rates with more games played because you need to learn how he works. He's a very unique champion, and even though he's not directly meta, or even when he isn't directly meta, that scaling win rate with games played is what makes players fear those one tricks, especially in high elo, because he can solo carry those games with very little counterplay. He's always going to be good no matter what meta you're in, just because he plays and builds so differently to match the early or late game phases, so he doesn't really care what kind of meta it is. Doesn't require insane mechanics, really because of his snowball potential plus the phase rush and the pool that can give him a lot of safety, just makes him a really good champion and rewarding champion to one trick to climb and to stick with no matter what. Now in 5th place we have Ahri. Because her play rate is actually pretty good, her win rate's always very solid, she has really multiple build paths that you can go with, so it really doesn't matter what meta you're in. The full-blown assassin mode can be a more skilled version, but her win rate does go up a fair bit with games played despite having a really good win rate regardless. So you're guaranteed to have multiple skins a year, a good win rate that will only increase over the course of the season, and you know that Riot loves your champion, so she's probably never going anywhere. And now with mid lane out of the way, I would like to invite you into my house, the jungle. And let's begin with Elise. Have you ever wondered why throughout the history of the jungle, Elise, barring one short period where Riot forgot she existed, has been an absolute core high elo jungler? Her early game allows her to play with such ferocity, with such versatility, that she can straight 1v9 from this position. Sure, you're not going to be AFK farming and stacking the old school Dark Harvest, but that's because she becomes a single target assassin. Tower diving's easy, level 3 ganking is easy, dragons, heralds, they're also easy. And while she isn't exactly easy per se, the fact that you have 6 abilities at level 3 means that once you come to grips with how to transition fluidly between her forms, how far you can push the limits with her early game, and how creative you can be with pathing, invades, and ganking, gives you basically an unlimited imagination of possibilities in order to win games by the mid-game phase. If you find yourself getting these huge leads early but struggling to sort of close it out, Elise could be an excellent champion to main and control throughout the course of the entire season, as she transcends all metas, can beat a lot of junglers throughout many phases of the game, and of course, you know, the best perk is she tilts laners for basically the next 3 generations. Now, you might be surprised to see Kha'Zix on here, as he is pretty much often a meta champion. Elise goes in and out, but in the high elo she's definitely meta all the time. Kha'Zix, however, has one of the best one-trick win rates. More games you play, the higher up your win rate goes, which of course is a common thread in this video, but you wouldn't really expect it from something that is considered to be meta and decently accessible. That's because with Kha'Zix you have insane versatility and adaptability with multiple rune choices. Phase Rush, Conqueror, Hail of Blades is even a thing, Electrocute, Dark Harvest, all those build options that go with those rune choices, and basically that gives you an ever-present permanent meta champion that can transcend whatever Riot throws at the jungle. We've seen this many times before as his evolution orders change and prioritize based upon what the game state is. So maining Kha'Zix isn't really necessarily a one-season thing, it's almost like a lifelong idea. And on that note, we were going to talk about Rek'Sai because she has this insane early game, and she has an insane win rate on one tricks actually. But I do want to talk about one of those terrorizing one-trick champions that if you are a smurf with this champion on the enemy team, you've already won the game from a mental standpoint, and that's our favorite cat, Rengar. While he can struggle with certain metas in general, the fact that he has very dynamic itemization and as well dynamic rune choices, Conqueror vs Electrocute, Bruiser vs Tank vs Crit vs Lethality, you've got these choices, top lane you can go to, jungle you can go to, and that's also something we didn't talk about, role versatility within the champion you main. If you need a nice second role but you want to keep your champion pool as small as possible, Rengar provides that to you. And once you've literally honed the predatorial instincts required to dominate all life on this rift, as long as you understand the limits to which you can go at each phase of the game, there really isn't a champion that's much more snowbally within one singular game. So as you become an expert at exploiting the enemy's weaknesses in order to feed yourself, basically this is free LP, and again, like Kha'Zix, not for the season, but for many seasons. And next up we have Warwick, and you know, he's really picked or banned or nerfed, he's good in every meta, and there's a reason I have mained him since the rework. I love the simplicity of his kit, I love that he was meta transcended, and given the way I pick my champion pools, which is champions I identify with, I have mechanical ability to control well, and the fact that they transcend the meta shows you that if you're looking to climb, this is a very good choice. Yes, he can fall off in certain high elo metas, but I personally used him in my own Master Tier run at the end of last season. And the fact that he has such supreme objective control, good early ganks, a nice clear once you've got the Tiamat, you've got guaranteed lockdown, and you can build full tank to full DPS and have that versatility in-game to play towards your team's win condition, no matter whether you're starting in Bronze or you're starting in Platinum. Even if you're picking him up in Diamond, your win rate will increase the more you play this champion and understand exactly the limits you can push with his ultimate, with his E, and with his Q follow-through tricks. And all dogs like tricks and treats. And finally, if you'd like a taste of simplicity with a hint of condescension, Jarvan the 4th is always good. And when we say always good, we mean he's always good. Swap player style to match the team comp, the meta, how well the game is going. You know, you get 2 kills early, go warrior, build damage, one-shot the ADC. It sucks, you're 0-5, your teams are inting. Doesn't matter, go full tank, ult the enemy team and let your teammates do the DPS. Is it a level 2 gank meta? You've got that. Is it a level 2 invade meta? Well, you can do that as well. There's a reason he's picked in pro play so much and so often, and that's because he is safe. He has a good kit, it's versatile in-game, and the fact that he's pretty easy to pick up means that as you learn the tricks like flash EQ combos and so on, you can only improve and provide whatever your team needs in order to win. Okay, let's slide on down to the bottom lane and look at the ADCs. And we have to start with Kai'Sa. Her kit is way too overloaded, and there's really no reason why she wouldn't be good at any point in the meta, especially in SoloQ. Even when she is bad, like right now she's actually not doing so well, you can still make her work with varieties on her builds and her evolves. She has a high skill ceiling, you know, to know when to use what in the build and her kit, how you need to carry teamfights because it's very unique from an ADC perspective, and she is a later game champion, but she can win lane hard if you learn her very well. She definitely rewards time put in. And because you can always find a way to be relevant or main her jungle like I did a few years ago, this is a great champion to pick up and stick with. And next up we have Xayah. She is always good on a good player no matter what. And that means the meta cannot favor her at all, but that really is irrelevant. She scales so hard with player skill, plus games played on the champion, combined with the nature of her itemization, then you can always make her work if you understand her kit. And if she happens to be meta, then she is probably OP, so you get those free wins anyway. And even when she is meta, she's unlikely to be perma-banned, so you will still get her quite often. People are much more afraid of those Dravens all the time. Just remember to keep that feather system in your head and use it well because it is absolutely brutal when used properly. Third on the list here we have is Jinx. She doesn't have as high a skill ceiling as Xayah, but she's always just as good. Basically for all of Season 9 had a really good win rate. A lot of people said, hey, if you're low elo and you want to get gold, you want to get to diamond, this is the champion to use it from that position. And she wasn't even nerfed or buffed until recently. So really a great champion to main and also one of Riot's personal favorites, which means you're gonna get some fresh skins. It is worth noting that she spikes quite early for a crit champion, so really is ever going to be that bad. And for sure, without needing to say it, can really solo carry games once you get fed. And it works even better at the lower ranks as you climb, but she really isn't that bad in high ranks either. And by the time, imagine if you start in the low elos and you get to diamond, you'll be so good on Jinx you can navigate any of her potential weaknesses. And now the fourth ADC we have here is Draven. Yes, he is a typical 1v9 alpha dog ADC, and there's many jokes I could make, but I won't. And he's not as good in Season 10, but on skilled Draven players who've mained this thing for a long time, he is still doing just fine. One of the best one-trick ADCs in terms of absolutely one-tricking, hard to play against, can snowball out of control, and when you dominate lane and come back with 6 BF swords, I mean, what's the enemy ADC going to do? You can bully and carry yourself. You also have that nice little bit of disengage, which is always good when ganks come around, if of course you use wards and use a minimap. But these things aren't very common for ADCs now that supports are stronger in general than they used to be, and your skill on this champion will determine how much success you have with it, and therefore how much you can go through different metas. He isn't really played that much and is really nerfed because it's only good on skilled players. As such, like Katarina, put in the time, reap the rewards. And no, there are no discount codes on Draven's skill level. As such, we must talk about Aphelios, the new champion. The kid is so complicated according to Riot that he will always be better with more games played. Maybe it doesn't really feel that difficult once you've gotten used to him, but because of the fact that you need to dedicate about an hour to read his tooltips, his kit will always be overloaded and always reward the players that put in the time to learn exactly what everything does. And basically, unless Riot decides to gut him and make him irrelevant like Kalista, it will be hard for them to really keep him under control. He has extremely high skill expression, many ways that you can creatively carry games, and probably takes more investment in him to work than others, but like Draven, success won't be instantaneous. You will have to lose some games, you will have to get fluent with his skills. If he does become more meta though, he's definitely OP as we have just seen at the start of the season. Alright, let's stick to the bottom lane, and first up is Thresh. Literally, if you had to pick a poster boy for support lane, I think a lot of high elo players would pick Thresh just because of how much his kit has. He is also overloaded for support, so it will be difficult for him to ever be bad. He has that skill expression we talked about at the beginning of the video. And because of this, he's rarely ever touched balance-wise because it depends so much on the player's ability on the champion. A bad Thresh really looks like a bot. So despite the fact he's popular, his win rate really does increase steeply with games played. Can fit into any team comp, can fit into any game, any elo, and any meta. But if slow hooking isn't your thing, perhaps you like fast hooking. Blitzcrank. He's a little bit less meta-proof because he's a bit more binary in nature, but since they updated his kit, he now works better into matchups that were bad before. Not the high skill expression, it's more about how you plan to use your hook rather than making it very telegraphed. A good blitz will be creative in how he gets those kills and how he uses those roams and flanks to maximize his hook rate. He's not actually picked a ton usually, it does feel like he's picked more than he is, so it's a good chance that you will get him most games, and with that roaming and game impact, you know, one hook can change the face of a game, it can basically be a free snowball into dragons, barons, and wins. And if you weren't sensing a theme, maybe this choice of Pyke will give you that theme. It's that hooks from this position when you can roam can be kind of game changing, but this will be the last hooker of the video, wait, what? We'll just ignore that. He's an absolute monster on a good player, stupid damage, cash in like Draven with the ultimate to snowball, easy carry potential, way better with those games played, because knowing his full capabilities of how much he can take before running away, knowing when to go in, hitting those massive stun combos into ultimates, and obviously the most important thing, roaming with Mobies with W is almost second to none, and you can find it very easy to carry the rest of the map. Next up, we do suggest Bird. He probably has the best and most unique map movement, and like Pyke, those roam potentials can be really game-changing. He's also technically been a monster in the win rate department for a very long time. It hasn't been a meta where he's been considered absolute trash tier. But because of how different he is to all the other supports and champions in the game, it means that yes, he's harder to pick up, but generally Bard mains, the good ones, will always be able to 1v9 because their damage is actually really good. Their builds can seem weird, and learning the ins and outs of when to build what can be kind of difficult, but the scaling into late game, the good laning phases, the game-changing ultimate, makes him pretty much ridiculous with the magical portals, the stuns, and the general roaming. Maybe the Witcher should toss a coin to him, I think. And finally, we have Nami. Always good in every meta, even when mages aren't exactly the best. She can still win in lane. Her kit is really strong from a support position, can be defensive, aggressive, depends on the laning phases, depends on the meta. Her win rate does increase well with games played, which isn't as typical for support mages who are normally combo based, but because of her ultimate, her teamfight impact, her laning phase versatility, she can have a huge controlled outcome on games. And yes, this includes 1v5ing fights, healing, crowd control, setup, and protection. All good things you want in a support, and all things that are useful no matter what meta the bottom lane is in. And finally, let's talk about the top lane. And unfortunately, I hate to break it to you guys, your lane isn't bad, and it hasn't been that bad for a long time, especially in SoloQ and for 99% of people wanting to climb. That means we have some excellent 1v9 champions for you to use, and that begins with Darius. Did you think we're gonna start with anyone else? Crushing lanes so hard you roll over the game is always going to be a valid strategy from this position. But while that can work no matter what the meta is, you do have to translate that lead to the map. However, his lane dominance is ideal for SoloQ. You can learn when to fight more, you get the resets to carry the rest of the fight, and he's sometimes viewed as one-dimensional or simple, but his win rate really does increase with the more games played. It's not like you can just walk into a game with Darius and have a 55% win rate. There is actually a long-term reward to time invested. This is because winning lane early on is easier, but using that lead to close the game up before you become useless is actually a very high elo skill. He is banned a fair bit, which is a downside that we did talk about, but a really good champion to learn and carry with because his skills will translate to other champions that have a similar playstyle. Also for season 10 onwards, I suppose he does have those dragon souls that have given him a better late game than he's had in the past few seasons. Now next up we have Jax. He has such an insane late game that it doesn't really matter what is happening the rest of the game. His win rate does go up and down with the meta, but Jax mains are better at getting leads early game when he is weaker in that phase. More kills, more items. And with experience of course comes the knowledge of how to abuse 1v1s and small leads that you get in order to reach that late game fantasy much sooner. In terms of win rate and play rate, he's actually not that popular despite the fact it seems so, which means you're likely to get him quite often, and because you will get better with the more games you played, you will learn to carry harder, and he is basically the OG 1v5 quintessential top lane carry. Now here's a champion that isn't really picked that much, but really, I don't know why, because his win rate is always insane, and Kled has been like this for 2 years, but his play rate is actually quite low. And because people don't really know how to play against him that well with his mount system in lane, they don't know when to take advantage of all his weaknesses, and the fact that you can use that ultimate to roam as well as change the face of teamfights means he has some hidden power that other laners just aren't aware of. Once he has that lead, he is very difficult to play against, and you also need to learn how to use that lead with R very well, as I said, roam, TP plays, use it to snowball leads and close it out. So while it does take a decent amount of skill to really master his abilities and get his full game impact under your belt, once you do that, you're looking at something that's like a freeload train if you understand the meta and how to play top lane very well. And the penultimate champion is Camille. Similar to Kled in nature, but probably a bit more skillful. She's just a champion that's really played at all now, but always has one of the higher win rates. In fact, she's on some tier lists as being the best in the game at top lane at the moment. So it's not for everyone, and her win rate for people that just play a little bit isn't that great, but those who main her tend to have a very nice inflated win rate in comparison to the normal. Emphasis here is on her combos and how to trade and use that ultimate correctly. Like Kled has excellent roaming potential with her E and locked on ultimate, you can impact the rest of the map, which gives you that insane burst when you have her lead. Some have considered her an Irelia replacement. Irelia is just in a bad spot right now. Yes, high elo players that one-trick her are still doing okay, but even they say she's just not very useful in this current iteration of the game. And so if you main her, you can always use Camille, who does similar things, has similar skill levels, but doesn't tend to get hit very often with nerfs and buffs just because she isn't that popular. And finally, we have our good old ninja friend, Shen. And trust me, if you are low elo and you have good macro awareness but poor mechanical skill, you can tilt the living hell out of all laners and junglers by timing a very good ultimate. He's the tank option for this list, and basically there are tanks like Malphite and Ornn that may be better at the moment, but they really come in and out with the meta very heavily. Ornn, for example, really wasn't good, and I'm an Ornn main, so I can tell you he wasn't very good. At the moment, he's doing very well in the top lane meta, but that could change tomorrow. While Shen has very good win rates at the moment and is decently popular, his ultimate will always be useful. He can always win team fights with a good use of that shield. His matchups are decently okay, he's actually underrated in lane by most people, which definitely gives you a nice mental advantage. He does some decent damage with that, so you can carry and get a few kills once you get a good lane lead. You can actually win through a bit of split push, and because you have ultimate TP, that gives you a double macro play that you can use no matter what. If you're defending against a split push and your team gets caught out, use your ultimate to get to the fight and use your TP to get back to stop the split push. Basically the twisted fate of the top lane in that respect. And much like Rengar, he has the role versatility. If you get full support, you can take him support, and he isn't even actually that bad in the jungle. Although I would recommend a Nunu type pick for you in that case. Okay, that was a very intense, a very comprehensive, and a very well-rounded list for all the champions in this video. We hope for those of you who like to pick a champion and to stick with them and to perfect them and to master them and really identify with them, that you're able to find someone here that you can use in Season 10. Let us know if you did in the comments below. Please do consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing if you did enjoy the video. I've been your host, Virakayu, and as always, I will see you all in the next video.